Well, 2020 has been a crazy time, right? And the most recent, of course, our COVID pandemic continues. The statistics are up there. Over 44 million people in the world, over 9 million in the United States. A little over 1 million have died worldwide. 225,000 plus have died in the United States. However, the stats don't show something that is incredibly important. Those statistics don't reflect what's really happened. Because of our response to all of this pandemic, the social implications of isolation, of economic downturns, have been dramatic. Vulnerable populations, such as addicts, have suffered dramatically because of the isolation of this season. Overdoses have increased, abuse has increased, suicides have increased, domestic violence has increased, divorce has increased. Statistics I was reading a while back talked about, just long before the coronavirus, just about the impact on a person's health that being by themselves has negatively. That there's a 21% increase in premature death, that there's increase in anxiety and depression, and all kinds of health risks associated with isolation. In fact, it was said that for a person who healthily never abuses anything in their body, but is isolated and goes through isolation, it's worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So these impacts are dramatic. And as the Bible speaks of at the very beginning in Genesis, when God created us, it said it's not good for man to be alone. Our aloneness is not a good thing. We don't do well in it. Think about it, right? If you choose to behave in ways that are detrimental, a lot of times we will isolate you from the rest of the world. And then if you continue to do it, we'll even isolate you from that population, right? And put you in solitary confinement, because it's not good for man to be alone. There's no greater punishment than isolation. And so I want us to understand that this isolation has created a greater fallout than even just illness and death. It's created a dramatic spiritual vacuum in the lives of people. As we began this year, we talked about a TED Talk by Johann Hari in 2015, in which he drew the conclusion that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, that the opposite of addiction is connection. And that the real antidote to addiction is community. And it's interesting that as we've gone through this, the one thing we have lost is that. And churches have begun to lose it. Communities have lost it. Families have lost it. That sense of common unity, community, is critical to our health, to our spiritual well-being, to our emotional well-being, to our physical well-being in every way. In Ecclesiastes 4, Solomon says this in his wisdom. He says, "Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie down together, they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken." The power of community, the power of fellowship, the power of relationship. You know, I thought about the ministry of Jesus. Everything was done in community. Jesus didn't even start off alone. He immediately invited 12 other guys to follow along with him. And then when he sent those guys out, he always sent them out 2 by 2. As God called missionaries to go out and spread the message, he sent them out in teams of people. And so we see over and over again that this sense of community in my class on with the weekday mornings, we just got to Acts chapter 2, the beginning of the church, and the very first thing you see is the kind of fellowship that they shared, that it wasn't just a once a week or twice a week. It was a constant, everyday, constant involvement with one another's lives. That was critical. God designed it because we're designed by God to crave that and need that. In Proverbs it says, a friend loves at all times and a brother is born for adversity. We need each other all the time. However, we certainly need each other in times of difficulty and adversity and stress. You know, it's interesting that in our passage that we refer to a lot in this program, Romans 12, it says in verse 2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what it is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And so we talk a lot in this program about the vision of being transformed, that our minds being changed will lead to a life transformation, and that we will not just improve upon where we are. We won't just reclaim something that we once lost, but that we'll be transformed into a completely new thing that God envisions for each and every one of us. That comes through a transforming of the mind. But it's interesting that the next verse of that, when he talks about this transformation, he says, for the grace given to me, I say to every one of you, must not think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. That thinking soberly is really this vision of transformation. And it is experienced within relationship, because if you continue through the rest of Romans, it's interesting how critical relationships become. You know, as we have gone through isolation, the one thing it has created is divisiveness. It's created a sense of kind of tribalism and tribal name calling and dispersions and the us and them. And I think about what has happened within our society. I mean, it's been the perfect storm for those who want to create dissension, because they've isolated us with a pandemic, so we can't go out and see everybody. And then we have the media barraging us with all kinds of strongly held convictions about things that have created division and suspicion and feelings and names and categories and all of these things. And we can't get out, and we've lost our connection with each other. So those things, those wedges have driven us deeper apart and created greater dissension. And so I want to mention three things briefly tonight as we think about the importance of how to build a relationship of love. And so the first one is in the next couple verses. In Romans 12, verses 4 and 5, it says, for as in one body we have many members, and the members do not have the same function, so we, though many, as one body in Christ, and individually members one of another. So the first thing I want to emphasize is this, that if we're going to develop relationships of love, we need to understand that we are members of one another, that we belong to each other, that we are intimately connected to one another. And we all know that feeling. You know the feeling that people you're close to, you sense something's wrong with them even when you don't know that there's actually something wrong with them. That's how deeply we're connected with each other. And so we're members of one another. We belong to each other. We're attached to each other. We need each other. In fact, Paul uses this over and over again, this picture of a body, interconnected. If one part hurts, they all hurt. If one part celebrates, they all celebrate. We're interconnected that way. And we need to understand that. The way we build love is realizing that we have a dependency on one another, that we count on one another. And he goes on and emphasizes another aspect I think is important. So we're members of one another. And secondly, in verse 9, it says, let love be genuine, abhor what is evil, hold what is good, love one another with brotherly affection, outdo one another in showing honor. So one of the other ways that we can love one another with brotherly affection is by honoring one another, by respecting one another. Later on, he will say in chapter 13, pay to all what is owed to them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. Owe no one anything except to love each other, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. And he goes on and says, love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. Respect, honor is an important part of building love for each other. You know, it's easy in our culture to be disrespectful. That's kind of the cultural norm today. If we can label somebody, call another person named, look down our noses at them, we can disrespect them. And I wonder at times, in fact, we had a conversation in one of the classes recently about why do we do that? And particularly when we were talking about Jesus' arrest, how he was, I mean, not just charged with a crime falsely and then arrested, but then this terrible sense in which he was mocked and ridiculed, spat upon, laughed at, slapped at, scorned, laughed at. And you wonder why. Why isn't just guilty, crucify him enough? But it's never enough for us. There's something about us, there's something about our brokenness, there's something about our sinfulness that wants to display disrespect, that wants to have disregard, that wants to dishonor. And that's not the path of love. In fact, in our conversation about that, what really occurred to me as I listened to the brothers talk was that if we have a category in our lives that we can disrespect somebody, then we have a place where we've justified being unloving, where we have justified hate. Whether it's drawing a line based on racial things or gender things or political parties or political positions. Now, I'm not saying we agree, we don't have to agree. But I think we're called to honor, respect. And that's the path of love. Because if we draw a line any other way, we will justify disrespect, we'll justify being unloving, and we can't complain when somebody else draws a line that puts us on the other side of that. Because we've done the very same thing. Love honors. Love respects. In 1 Peter 2, verse 17 says, honor everyone. Love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the emperor. And it goes on interestingly. The one thing I was going to mention in John 8, when Jesus has put before him a woman who's been caught in the very act of adultery. And as the religious leaders were looking for Jesus' judgment, ready to stone her for her crime, Jesus simply asked a question. He said, they can imagine this woman who had been caught in the very act of adultery, waiting for the rocks to begin to fly. And Jesus says, he is without sin, be the first to cast a stone. Whoever feels like they're qualified, that they're better than, that they're more pure than, that they are superior to, throw the stone. And interestingly, as Jesus stoops back down and writes in the dirt, he begins to hear rocks drop, one by one on the ground. And interestingly, John notes that it began with the oldest to the youngest. People who recognized their honest assessment of their lives. And when all the crowd left, and it was simply the woman and Jesus, Jesus looked at that woman and said, is anyone here to condemn you? And she says, no, there isn't a single person. Interestingly, Jesus is still there. Jesus could have cast every one of those stones. And yet he says, neither do I condemn you. Go and leave your life of sin. Jesus didn't say it was okay. He just honored her. He just respected her. He just shared grace with her. Which leads to my last point, that we are members of one another, that we honor and respect one another, and thirdly, that we accept one another. In Romans 15, Paul will write, "May the God of endurance and encouragement grant you to live in such harmony with one another, in accord with Christ Jesus, that together you may with one voice glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you for the glory of God. Therefore accept one another as Christ has accepted you." See, we are to accept one another. We are to invite one another. We are to welcome one another, just like Jesus did for us. Just like Jesus did for that woman. We accept, we welcome, we embrace one another. See, in Romans 5, it says that just the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. And in that passage, he calls us weak, he calls us ungodly, he calls us sinners, and he calls us enemies. And yet we are accepted by him. And so the path of love is those who are weak, accept. Those who are ungodly, welcome. Those who are sinners, embrace. Those who are enemies, love. It's often been said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And so I would suggest that the people that you dedicate yourself to will be those who will determine what dedication you end up living in your own life. In Psalm 133 and verse 1, it says, "Behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity." I'm thankful that one of the things that we have the opportunity to do here is, in spite of the divisiveness, in spite of the rhetoric, in spite of the disrespect and dishonor, we get to love. And it's that love from God shared with each other that leads to the transformation that God desires for each and every one of us. Walter has some things to share with us as we continue our celebration together. Walter?
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Walter DeVere. I want to thank Tom and the rest of the staff for all they've done for me here at His Way and the residents, putting up with me, helping me get through this, to make the transition back into the real world. As it happens, you come here, your life kind of goes on pause while you're working through these things, and that's a good thing. It really is. It helps you slow down and, get yourself back together before you have to really take on the challenges of life once more. They don't go away, so it's just, they really do help you here to prepare yourself to get back to being a person, to being a productive member of society. That's what the end goal is, I guess, to not be in the same ruts that we tend to get into. And also want to thank my mother for putting up with me, having the patience to always, show me love and not kick me out the door. Well, she does, but, she'll always bring me back when I'm doing good. It's happened a few times, okay? I wanted to share with everybody here, my time at His Way. It's a great program. When you first get out of jail, and you come to a rehab, you're like, oh, I don't want to be here. Please, anything but this. Just let me go home. And, you have the classes, and at first when I got here, the whole COVID situation was going down. So I was the only person in class. It would just be me and the teacher. So I got some real, one-on-one time with people. And it was a great thing. It helped me, because I do better, one-on-one. I'm not great with big crowds. But, I got to meet people and actually get to know them and spend some real time with them, and not be in a class-type basis, which was a real plus for me. You know, and I got to do several different things here, you know, in those first 30 days, like going to the thrift store, you know, getting to, like, Doug having me mow grass around here, you know, and getting to do little projects like that. And also, Doug, I wanted to thank you for always giving me something to do. I do appreciate it very much, sir. One of a kind, Mr. Doug, one of a kind. You know, but getting back to the thrift store and doing various things around here, it helps get you back in the mindset of being productive, you know, going from being lazy and on your butt for months at a time. And it was a good thing, you know. It's a slow building process, so it doesn't just jump you right back into full throttle work, you know, because that's not always a good thing. Something I'm guilty of myself doing. I have a problem with that, but working through it, you know, and also with the rides, you know, helping you get to work and just keeping you, you know, it's a great thing. There's not many places that do that, you know. I know that's a great thing. You can truly come here with nothing and actually walk out the doors with a life, you know, with something to go for. And there's something to be said for a program like that. And I really, truly am grateful, Tom. Thank you very much. And all of you that work here and the residents. Also, as we had mentioned, you know, John Brown would have been graduating with me here tonight. I really, truly wish he was. It's an unfortunate event. You know, him, like me, he was the first person to get here, you know, right after me with the COVID, you know, after about a week, you know, and then it was just me and him for a while. And that was great, you know, so I got to spend some real one-on-one time with John, you know, then Deontay showed up and then others and so on. And, you know, it was really nice, you know, because we, you know, same, you know, similar background, real bad drug use, you know, in and out of jail, you know, and, you know, the camaraderie, not the camaraderie, it's the wrong word, but we could just, you know, we could connect, you know, all of us know that. And, you know, and then we went from the transition of classmates to housemates, you know, where we're living in the same house together, you know, and it was a beautiful thing, you know, making a friend that way, you know, someone, because, you know, we all have our drug buddies, you know, and they're friends. They're not any less of a friend, but it's a strange thing when you make a friend that's sober, you know, when you have a friend that's, you know, when y'all make a connection that's sober. You know, there's something to be said for that. It's definitely different, you know, because you're not, you know, when you're there for drugs, you're there for drugs, you know, that's what the friendship is. You know, sure, it can grow and be more than that, but it was a real, you know, it was definitely something I needed in my life, you know, as sober friends, and the others that I've made here, Preston, Jason, all of you guys. I do appreciate every single one of you. Also, let's see here, you know, because I had a lot of fond memories with John, you know, sitting around drinking coffee and watching him play with his camera, you know, him piddling around here and on his little golf cart, you know, having fun. You know, he enjoyed it. It was just, you know, swapping manly stories, that sort of stuff, you know. But, you know, John, he was trying to get into, you know, doing service work, social work, you know, which is a good thing, you know, and people like us, it helps us, you know, grow through it and continue on with our lives. And that was how I felt, you know, and how, you know, because once I didn't want to lose John as a friend when he left, you know, and I wanted to help him and make sure that, you know, because a little stumble like that, and it's real easy to really, you know, feel like you got kicked in the teeth and you got your reasoning, and I know me, and I didn't want that for him, really didn't, and I wanted to do whatever I could, and I tried, you know, and I got to spend the last couple days with John, you know, that he was here with us, and you know, conversate with him and go to lunch, you know, and we had lots of talks and stuff, you know, and he was a little down on himself right there the last day, and, you know, but he also did mention to everybody, I wanted to repeat myself, 'cause I know some of y'all weren't at the funeral, that he really, truly missed everybody here, you know, and he regretted that what happened, and he really missed everyone, and I know he would want me to convey that, you know, but he was truly a friend, and I was unwilling to let him go as a friend, but I guess he'll always be right here, you know, in friendship, and, you know, God rest him. No. Also, I wanted to thank everyone here, Tom, Daryl, Ronnie, Doug, Matt, Mike, TJ, Greg, give me some love, Jordan, all of you, you know, I truly want to appreciate and thank you all for everything that you've done, putting up with me, helping me get through this. I truly intend to come by as often as I can, come bug you guys. If not, you know, I got to give y'all heck somehow for helping me. You know, giving it to me, I got to give it back, right? You know, Dana, I forgot Dana. Where you at? Dom, Doug. You know, I don't see Jackie around here. I'll get him in the morning. All right. But no, I just want to say farewell to you guys, but it's truly not. I will be in and out and around and about to try to get involved somehow with you guys. Also wanted to leave with a few words of wisdom. You know, with purpose comes motivation, everyone. I know when we get here, we're a little lost, and it's hard to stay motivated in the program and keep yourself going and active. You know, it's like, it's a struggle, you know, but as you go on, you start finding your purpose again in life, and that's helped me greatly. You know, is with my purpose again, I have motivation. And, you know, and just remember that, you know, while you're here, let the stress of life be kind of on pause, you know, focus here, be here and in this moment. Because I got back out and it's the same stress, you know, it's not, you know, going to work and just trying to get a life going and not let it overwhelm you. You know, it's there, it's not going to go anywhere, I promise. And just take your time with it and take your time here and make some real friends. You'll enjoy it, I promise.